Welcome to GBTA's webinar, Every Corporate Event is a Travel Story. From flights and hotels to logistics, travel sets the tone for confidence, comfort, and engagement. For some, that comes naturally. For others, especially those who are rarely traveling, it can be the most challenging part of the journey. That's a reality Dentalcore faces every time they bring dentists from across the country to an event. Their attendees aren't road warriors. They need reassurance, clear communication, and thoughtful guidance to arrive with confidence. And in a world of delays, cancellations, and strikes, travel can make or break the event experience. This webinar will explore how to travel and how travel can be designed as part of the event itself, turning a potential challenge into a strategic advantage. I see we have some event managers in the audience, as well as some travel managers and procurement folks who orchestrate meetings and events alongside transient travel. This will be an excellent session for all. You will learn how to build travel confidence and engagement among attendees, support infrequent travelers with personalized experiences, manage disruptions without derailing the event, and combine smart technology and human care for peace of mind. We want this to be an engaging educational session. We encourage you to add your questions to the Q&A box at any time. We will do our best to field questions as we go and allow time at the end as well for Q&A. And with that, I'll hand it over to Jessie.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dawn. I appreciate it. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessie Jonathan. I'm the Vice President of Operations at Encore Corporate Travel. So Encore Corporate Travel has been a full service TMC travel management company for the last 40 years. We really have been known as the TMC who cares. Um, what's What's really important to understand is that we're a full service agency. So what that means is we do everything from full traveler services all the way through to having our own proprietary technology, program management, you name it. Um, for those of you who have been in the industry for 5+ years, you've seen the comeback that corporate travel has made. Um, so numbers are showing that. We can see that from pre-pandemic numbers in 2019 to today, corporate travel has made a comeback plus a little bit, and we're seeing nice growth. What's really fascinating, and I'm sure Dawn mentioned that today we have event planners, we have travel managers, we have people from all over the space. Um, what's really interesting is that I'm sure we've all been feeling the impact of the growth of event management has taken, right? So corporate events are actually, if you look at the numbers, outpacing corporate travel in growth over the last 2 years. Um, so a little bit more about me personally. So over the last 8 years, I've been at Encore. I started my career at Encore in operations, managing traveler services. But over the last 8 years, I've really seen everything from technology implementation, customer care, product management. And I'm really excited to say that in the last little while, I've stepped foot into the event management space. Um, I'm very excited today to be joined by my client, Carrie Podolsky. So welcome, Carrie. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. I want to get started today. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and Dental Corp and what you guys do and what your role is there.
Yeah, so I've been at Dental Corp for 8.5 years, but not always in the event space. I started on the corporate development side, so I really got to understand the business. I did the onboarding, and it kind of is relevant to my experience now. I've only been part of the events team for about 2.5 years, but the experience of onboarding a practice and the experience on the event side is so critical, and I think that is such a passion of mine, specifically around the travel piece, because when you think about the experience of an event, the travel is the beginning and the end. The event can be, you know 10 people, it can be 1,000 people, but the experience of the beginning and the end really sets the tone for how people feel at the end of the event.
Absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit about like Dental Corp events? How many events do you guys do in a year? How big is that space for you guys?
Yeah, we do 100 plus events. They're
Wow.
internal, external. It could be a 10-person dinner, it could be a conference. There is a lot of things that we do in between. But setting the stage, really, there's so many moving parts in events. And I think sometimes when you're not in the event space, it's really hard to understand before you even get to the travel piece, you got to the venues, the swag, the vendors, the communications, and then there is travel. But it's very important to understand, before you actually even book the location, how the travel impacts where you're going. So I think for me,
Absolutely.
the learning of that is really important. And it can be the biggest stress point, I think, for some people in corporate events, because travel, you can control so much an event. You're very good problem solving, but when it comes to that travel piece, you need the right partner that can help you. I'm not a travel expert. I understand the event side, but getting that partnership, like Encore, and I know we're going to go into details, how that support comes into place, but that is a really big thing when you're setting the stage for a successful event.
Awesome. So can you take us through, like, if you were to tell me, like, okay, I'm putting on an event,
Yes.
what does the planning process really look like? Step by step, what are the things you have to think about? And how do you actually go through that process?
Yeah, so again, when we're talking about, I'm going to give an example of an event, because I think for our listeners, I think it's important to kind of set the stage for one of the events that we partnered with Encore. We were
For sure.
just in Vancouver. We had 700 people across Canada. Before we actually um, before we actually got to that, we had to look at with our partner, can everybody in our Canadian, our partners, support center, we're across Canada, can everybody actually get to where we want to go before we even book the venue? We liked the venue, it was great, but can everybody get there? Is it easy to get there? And when I say easy, I just mean, is there an airport close enough? And so I think once we establish Vancouver, it's easily, there's an airport that everybody can get there, and we're in remote areas. We're not just in Toronto or Calgary. People are coming from everywhere. So the our partnership with Encore really started from the beginning before we actually signed on the dotted line. Can this be successful with that experience of the traveler?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So, this recent event that you're talking about, can you tell us a little bit more about it? Who were the people that were going? What was your process of kind of getting them there, and how did it go?
Yeah, great questions. So they are our dentists, in our 570 plus practices across Canada. Their spouses are invited. Not everybody brings a spouse, but a lot of spouses come. Suppliers or sponsors, and support center, which is our head office. So there's a lot of different people. They are not all quote unquote corporate travelers. So
Mhm.
for me, working with Encore, we had to kind of set the tone with what we need, and thinking about the actual traveler. So everybody gets to Vancouver and it is full steam. It's 48 hours of, I don't know, 15 events. There's galas, there's social events, there's continuing education, there's supplier engagement, there's a lot of food. And then there's a lot of travel. And again, that goes back to what I previously said. You can spend all the time and energy and money in the event, the actual event, which is great. But if somebody leaves, and we all know with airlines, people get bumped, people are not sitting together. We need that partner in place like Encore to step in and support that traveler. Because I would hate for us to have this amazing event and they go home and they have a really terrible experience with the traveler. Nobody helped them. And that's all that they can really grasp. And you listen, nothing's perfect. Things happen in the travel world. We've all experienced it. Um, and I think it is how you problem solve, how you support um, that traveler, that makes the world of difference. And then to your other
100%.
question, how it went, it was amazing. I think I said to you recently, like, that went really, really well. We took 700 plus people, flew them from everywhere in one location and got them home. And there was maybe one or two things that happened with the airline, but I think, like, kudos to everybody who helped, especially Encore, who kind of came in and helped me not stress about it. I didn't have to stress about it.
I'm so glad to hear that. So for those people who are listening that maybe don't necessarily have an idea of, the value that the partner brings to this, that the travel partner brings to the process. So can you maybe paint a picture of the before and after having that partnership? Like, what was it like, before that partnership existed, and what challenges were you facing, and how did those get solved throughout choosing the right partner?
Yeah, so again, I've only been part of the events team for 2.5 years, but I know before it didn't go well, and I say that, and I'm just being as transparent as possible because I think that's really kind of important. There was no clear line of communication. There was no centralized system. There was just like a lot of lists. And again, this is not the only thing that you're doing with an event that have lists. And I think I've really developed this passion for travel because I know how important it is. And this year, we actually tried something new. And I think, you know, from you can help out explain more. We used your platform, your Z platform, and technology. You know, at first, it was a little bit like, oh God, these are dentists. They're used to, maybe calling that agent and say, can you book this for me? But they might still need that. But I want to do things more efficiently for me, for the traveler, for anybody. And it worked really well with how we did it this year.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That's so
Yeah.
nice to hear. So I want to just take a moment and explain a little bit about what Z is and how it works, just so that everybody can be following along with us and really understand. So, like I mentioned earlier, we stepped into the meetings and event space a little more recently, and started off with full service team that was supporting, but it became obvious very quickly that in this day and age, one, people want an automated solution. But two, we wanted to be able to manage all of these different use cases that came up. Carrie mentions dentists and hygienists and people who are part of the team at the administration team at Dental Corp, right? So we wanted to be able to solve all of those pain points, and they could really only be solved through technology. So what we did is we built our own. So Z events has basically, I'll explain the process a little bit. It's pretty straightforward. So we kind of collect requirements from you. We set you up in Z so that we have, your company and basic things. It's pretty straightforward. But then what happens from a traveler perspective is that they get invited to register in Z. So basically, I receive an email. It says, "Welcome to Z," or "You've been invited to this event. Thank you so much. Please click here to go create your profile and book your trip." When they click there, they've already been loaded into the system as an attendee, so we know who they are and that they've actually been invited to the event. You could have single sign-on and more, uh, diligent security if you wanted to, or you could go something as simple as username and password or one-time passwords. Basically, you create your profile. You create a secure profile where all of your information is encrypted. And then once you've created your profile, a book a trip or book for your event link or tab opens up. You're able to click that, book my trip, go into the online booking tool, select from your flights that you want to book. The parameters of what the traveler can book can be very limited to make sure that they're arriving and departing at a certain time. We're obviously not going to let them go to the Bahamas if the event is in Vancouver. There are parameters that are controlling those items. But at the end of the day, I mentioned earlier, Encore has been known as the TMC who cares. We're all about service. The technology is not meant to replace the white glove service. It's meant to enhance it, right? So there's a team that's there 24/7 to support the travelers as they need. Carrie, you mentioned that your travelers are not corporate travelers, right? You mentioned that they're dentists. They're not, these aren't people who are used to being part of a corporate travel program, going on to an online booking tool, booking their trip, expensing, all of that process, right? So what was how did it manifest in being so simple to have people book online when these travelers aren't necessarily part of, that cohort?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Z platform, I think the process, I think having the control that they could book themselves. They can pick what airline, some people are like, I'm a WestJet or I'm an and I'm an Air Canada, I don't want to do what you tell me to do. I want to do my own. So I think the solution with putting it into their control really helped them with the whole travel experience. Like, I think that really, I think I kept saying to Encore, they are dentists. They're not sitting at a desk ready to go. They need to be able to have access to book at 10 at night when they're at home, when they get at night, or on the weekends. And I think that was critical this year. The control, the less friction, the proper processes, and that didn't take the support away. Like you said, white glove service is really important. It was important to me when I started at Dental Corp 8.5 years ago, and it's still important in the event world. It's a very transferable skill across our organization. Like, the service culture is important, and the fact that they could pick up the phone, and technology is not everybody's friend. Some people need help. Somebody is there to still say, hey, you can still do that. You're doing great, but you just need to click on that button.
Mhm.
And so I think the support and the solution and everything, and it didn't actually take away that the technology, like the human interaction, what was still there. And I just want to kind of, that's talking about the Z platform. But if we take a step back, I just want a little bit of a funny now, haha, but was not funny back there. When you talk about white glove service, I just have an example. Last year's partner conference was in Mont Tremblant. And lucky us, Air Canada strike decided that was the time that they wanted to. So we had 550 people there waiting to get home, and we were waiting for the strike. That was a little bit stressful. And Encore, I got to know the CEO of Encore because we were talking at 5 in the morning, at the start of my day. We were talking at 1 a.m. in the morning at the end of my day.
Wow.
What are the commitment for our travelers? It's such a big thing. Our dentists, needed to get back home for their families. And if we didn't have dentists, where they need to be working, that's a huge hit to Dental Corp as a business. So that communication, that level of support is just so far above what you think like what you ask for and what you think you're getting. And I think it really put me at ease. There isn't a whole event happening, and then there's a strike, and it all worked out. I think on the Sunday I was on I think driving on the phone for about 4 hours with somebody from your team, having to rebook some people, and we got everybody home. And I
Wow.
couldn't have done it without that support for me and for the travelers and for Dental Corp.
Wow, that's an awesome, I mean, unfortunate, but awesome
Yeah.
outcome. So
We
that's
can kind of laugh that they chose our weekend, but
now
I'm
that it's
glad it.
over. Yeah.
Yes, not for
Yeah.
another 15 plus years.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so can you tell us a little bit more about the support that you received in the last event? So we've been talking a lot about this big event of 700 people in Vancouver. Was there anything different about the support that you received there?
Yeah, so we actually had two people from your team come to our event. We had on-site support, which was such an added bonus this year. And you don't think you need it until you need it, and that they're not there. So, it's not only specifically for them taking a flight. And I think people check in, they're not sure, maybe they want to extend, maybe they Air Canada bumped one person. You know, having somebody that you can say hi and, can you please help me in the moment, not sit on the phone, that really set the event and the experience to the next level. And also we had ground transportation, and knowing the flights, and flights change all the time. Like, there's so many moving parts in the moment, and Encore stepped it up and was there. And you know what, also, Jesse, I would say these partners, and we call our dentist partners, have been uh, when they need the support, they were calling, and they spoke to people specifically for your team, and then they got to meet them. It's like we were all in this family of this experience, and it was such it made the event that much more special and successful, because they thought, it doesn't matter if something happens, they got me. and travel can be
Wow.
stressful. And it was just so not stressful that I still say to you, wow, how did we do that? That was awesome. Like we just had everything in place, and there's no magic potion, and there's no perfect in the event space, in the corporate travel space. You cannot you cannot come up with every possible thing that could happen. But knowing that you have the support in place, you know that you're going to be taken care of. They will help you find a solution. It might not be what the traveler wants, but there will be a solution always. 9 out of 10 times, I would say.
And it makes me so happy to hear that, and I think the sentiment, goes in either direction because I think the fact that we took the approach of having dedicated support throughout the booking process. Obviously, booking an event of, 750 people is not something that you do over a weekend, right? It was a long-winded process of over 6 months or so of prepping and booking and going through all of that process. And so I think, the sentiment was shared from the members of my team that were supporting your travelers throughout that period of time that they got to meet them and they actually had built a relationship with the travelers over time. And so it kind of creates this cohesion of you know, Encore being a part of the dental corp team rather than just being a supplier or rather than just being, a support system. It's really we're partners. And I think that that extra touch of having human connection is really critical in that process. So I'm really happy to hear that the
Yeah,
sentiment was shared.
absolutely.
Um, so we've talked about a lot of stuff here. We've talked about technology, we've talked about support, we've talked about swag and the types of travelers and all of this stuff. But like, I really want to take us all the way back when the moment you have this event coming. So we can keep on the theme of using the conference as our example, so to talk specifics. But the moment this is coming, what is step one? Where do you start?
Well, you need a location. Um, that is, you need dates that work within your business, and you need a location. But before you can actually, like I said, sign on the dotted line, the travel piece almost is, side by side with picking that location. Now we're kind of in the planning phase for next year. And there's some places that we're like, we can't go. We're looking at the travel. We've engaged Encore. Can you help us? Can we get it's going to be 750 plus people there. Can we get is there only one flight a day? Going back to that experience, you can actually choose a location before you've consulted your travel partner to know that it's actually working. So I think that is where you start. That's where we've started. And I keep saying it, Jesse, and until I blew him in the face, but the experience matters. If you have no direct flights, somebody has to stop over and they're there for 48 hours, they're going to say, I'm not coming. We want 1,000 people to come. We don't want that travel piece to be a deterrent for saying, I'm not actually going to come to your event.
Absolutely.
So I think that's where you start.
Awesome. Awesome. So, obviously just the experience, even if you didn't have the experience of the other 100 events and years that you've been doing this, just the experience of planning this one event, getting 750 people, from all over the place to a location, putting on this spectacle, and having people really engaged in the whole thing and having it go smoothly. What are some pieces of advice or that you would give others who are looking to do something similar or put on smaller events, whatever that may be? Um, that things to think about, things to make sure you're prepared for, things not to forget. What are some words of advice that you would give?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've talked a lot about the right partnership. That is, you are an extension of the events team. You're an extension of Dental Corp. It's not that I'm the client, and that is not how I see it. I think you need people in your corner that you trust they as a company have the right pieces in place, like the support, like the technology, the processes, clear communication. So I think that's where I would start. The other piece, going back to the traveler, is understanding who your traveler is. We haven't, like I said, dentists are not corporate people. They're in the practice, and they might go away with their families, but I think most of them are calling their travel agent, booking that way. They're not saying, "Hey, you don't have 100% control. We're going to put this in place." But Z gives them that control. But also knowing that the traveler, might not be able to do it from the 9 to 5. How are they going to get the support when they're home? I think having people book as quick as possible is our goal, because then they're locked in and they're coming. Think, this comes up and this comes up, or like we want all of our partners to come with us. So trying to take, layer back all the things that could possibly deter them from actually going and booking. And so, dentists, there's a range of ages. The technology piece, I think at the beginning, I'm like, I don't know if they can do it. It's something new. They're used to this. We've been doing this for many years. How can we make it as simple? And also from our perspective, financially, how do we put boundaries? I think, having it set up the way that from a business perspective, and when I say it, I mean Z, the platform, and everybody kind of understanding their roles. So that for me is really how to set up for success. And I think this year we did a really good job.
Awesome. And so I just want to talk about something you mentioned there. I think you could argue that it's probably one of the most important pieces because the goal of an event is attendance, right? It's people registering and showing up, right? Like that's your goal. It's people coming. If nobody shows up to the event, you have a big problem, right? So,
Right, exactly.
yeah. You want to have you mentioned wanting to have as few deterrents as possible. Something that comes up a lot in my experience is the notion of guest travelers, non-profiled travelers. It's something that comes up frequently across the industry, not just in meetings and events, but in corporate travel as well. Um, and generally speaking, the guests have to have this kind of like side process that's not so straightforward, but they tend to sometimes be the most important attendees that you need coming to your event, right? Or they're really critical people. So how did you manage? Because I think you said earlier that out of your 700, half of them were the spouses of the partners, right? So they obviously were not necessarily profiled, and they didn't have like dental corp emails, and they're someone's wife, someone's husband, right, someone's partner. And so, how did you manage that process, and how did it work and integrate with everything else that you were doing?
Yeah, I think that's going back to kind of setting up for success and knowing your traveler. The traveler is the dentist. They are invited with their spouse, and knowing that that spouse wants to be booked together. They want to be sat together. How do we ensure that they're traveling together? I think about the non-profit guest booking, but I think about the dentist as a whole. Like I think it's a one kind of. It's not necessarily separate.
Hmm.
That is like if I'm going to go with my family, if my partner, how do I want to experience it? I don't want to be in two different places. I don't want to. I want to travel with my husband. I don't want him
Hmm.
to be in, you know, business class and I'm back. I want to both be in business class. How do we how do we ensure that? So I think, setting that up with your team ahead of time. The spouse is coming. We need to ensure how are we going to ensure that they're booked together, that they travel together, um, et cetera, et cetera.
Awesome. And so, for reference, were you able to book the spouses on Z as well as the dentists?
Yes, yes. I
Okay,
was able to
awesome.
book both of them, and I think that goes back with the experience. You want the experience, it might be the spouse actually booking the trip. It might not be the dentist. The dentist is too busy, and the spouse can do it because they're at a job that
Mm,
they have a desk. So I think it's having that access, and the guest booking is also important because they're traveling too.
of course, yeah. And so I think what we see in the industry, generally speaking, when it comes to non-profile travelers or guest bookings, is we see travelers that, or sorry, processes that don't allow for automation, don't allow for simplicity, don't allow for visibility. And so I think that's a key factor, at least from what I've seen, is more than often, events will have at least some guest travelers that are part of the event, and having that visibility over their experience and having them have a streamlined experience is really, really important. And so I think I would just mention that as another thing that I would urge people to think about as they choose a partner. So we do have a few questions in the chat, and we're halfway through. So I'd like to start engaging and keeping people included. So um, I have one question that says, "Can you get the flight manifest on the platform as well, or is it sent by email? How about managing budget?" So that's a great question. So in Z, you actually have a an event organizer, you have a different view. So it looks pretty similar to the view that the attendees have. But if you just like, it's here's your name of your event and how many people are coming, a countdown. Your event is traveling in 30 days, and then. As the event organizer, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll have two buttons, and one button is the flight manifest button, and one button is the sales report button. So what that means is at any time it's a self-serve platform where you can actually just click and download your flight manifest or your sales report. Your flight manifest is really going to be about where people are when they're getting there, making sure that everybody's arriving at the right times, validating people booked the right stuff. But then your sales report is going to be more around the budget side of things, so making sure that you're if you had a $50,000 budget for your flights for your event, now you're reaching like 30,000. Are you on par? Is there something that we want to do to, tighten the reins on the travel policy, or are we okay? We're there to support as you look at those numbers and make decisions.
And Jesse,
Um,
from an events perspective, having that flight manifest, yes, it's great to know that who's booked, who's coming, who's going, but we do a lot of events that are not necessarily for all 700 and plus people. We have a special cohort on the Friday that needs to be in there. We have this VIP mix and mingle that we need specific people. We need to also check that the people that are supposed to be there when they need to be there are actually booking the dates. So for the events perspective, it's great that I have a button that I can just get that information. I don't have to, hey, can I get that? When can I get that? And I think having all that information in the event planners wheelhouse, and it's so easily accessible, it creates less friction, less needing to like that communication back and forth. You don't need to have that. It's right there. It's anytime you want.
there's nothing worse than having to wait for a report, right? So we
Right.
know that's a pain point. So we wanted to make sure that it was really easy. Um, I see another question that says, if you don't invite partners, but they book flights together on the platform, how do you split the cost? So that's a really good question. So at the start, when we set up the event, we will determine who is invited and who is not. If you do not invite someone, they cannot book in the event. So let's say I was invited to an event and I want to book my spouse, but they're not invited to the event. After I book myself, it's not going to let me book for somebody else, right? So all of the configuration is done at the start to make sure that you don't have people, adding travelers that they're not supposed to. You could have some people that are allowed to book for guest travelers and add people to the event. Or you can say, no, only the attendees are invited and only these people can come. So it's completely customizable by event to make sure that you don't end up with, extra costs on your form of payment if that's how you entered it.
I do also think, the Z platform, it is a great tool. And you mentioned, and I mentioned, white glove service, customer service. I don't think that technology replaces human interaction. I think you still need to like we had weekly meetings with Encore, and that is just to make sure that everybody is on this successful path forward. There's people, you're dealing with people. And we're not robots. Things happen. So I think Z platform has all the tools and the booking. But if there's things outside that you still need that support, which Encore provides, which was so nice because it's not like here's the platform, peace out, you're good, book your trip, and you're on your way. I think that human side and hopefully you don't need so much support, but you're dealing with real people who are picking up and going somewhere else. They're going to have questions. There's going to be nuances. There's going to be people that have special, special traveler, criteria that may not fit in what we as Dental Corp has decided that this is the parameters. So there is
Hmm.
still that piece that needs to be that human interaction. And I think it's great that you guys have identified that. I think we're like, how many people do you think are going to use this versus how much do you think we need outside of that? And setting that
Hmm.
expectation that we know that people are going to want to book outside what we've given them because that's just the
100%.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think what you're saying is really important because as much as, you can think about all the different use cases at the beginning and set yourself up for success from the start. The key, we always say humans are really good at adapting, but we're really bad at predicting, right? And so at the end of the day, we don't know what's going to come up. People have family emergencies, people have, things that come up throughout the process, and making sure that we're able to adapt and support is super important. Um, I see another question here that I'll grab. So it says, what if my event has some attendees that are paid by our company, but some of them need to pay for themselves? So Carrie, have you experienced that already? I'm not sure.
Um, we didn't, not necessarily the flight, but if our partners wanted to upgrade to business class, there was that option. And again, like I said, you need that human interaction. So people essentially booked under Dental Corp, and then they had to commit to the payments
Hmm.
for that
Awesome.
separate
Yeah.
event.
Yeah, and so yeah, there's a million and one things that can happen when it comes to payment, right, payment options, right? And so we do have technology that supports, specific meeting cards. If you're a corporate travel customer of ours already, we can accommodate your existing travel policies that and kind of flow through your transient program if necessary. But there are cases where there's a set of attendees that are paid for by the organizer, and there's a set of attendees that are not, and so we're able to accommodate multiple setups, so you can have, this list needs this thing and this list needs that thing, and the thing can be allowed to book business class, it can be needs to pay for themselves, it can be is allowed to arrive early, right? So that flexibility in setting up your travel policy and payment setup at the beginning is critical. Yeah. um That's a great as a hotel, what is the best way to work with Encore? We'd love to hear from you. I don't know what hotel you're from, but connect with us and we'll reach out. Our contact information is on our website, so reach out anytime. Um, Looking for more questions. Oh, there's a lot of questions. Um, so here we have, did you need to train the dentists on Z? I'll shoot that
Um,
one to you, Carrie.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I think we discussed this with your team, Jesse. I said, it's a new platform. I kind of want a playbook, just where to go for what. Because, I go on it and I'm like, "Oh, it's easy. I got that." But I've looked at it. I understand it. Again, going back to the corporate traveler and the non-corporate traveler that we're making a corporate traveler. And I know that kind of sounds funny, but we sent with them if people had questions, we had our playbook in our back pocket. And Encore put it together. It's kind of like step 1, this is how you get your code. This is how you log in. Um, all the way down to when you're checking into a flight. How do we check into the flight? Because they get an itinerary and there's numbers. Um, and I think I put myself into their shoes. Fun fact, my dad's a dentist. I know how he works. He would just say, "Carrie, can you do it?" So I was trying to avoid, you know, 700 people coming to me to say, "Hey, how do I check in? How do I do it?" And so again, going back to understanding the traveler and the steps, and as simple as it is as how do you check into the flight? I'm usually like, I got a pop up, I click it, and I'm next. This might be a slightly different because they get an itinerary with a number that they need to use. And I think this year, That's probably why also the technology with the proper communication, with really understanding what our travelers need was like the recipe for the successful traveler.
Wonderful. Awesome. So guys, I think
Yeah.
we've kind of um accidentally entered our Q&A session. So please, everybody, pop your questions in. We'll kind of just go through them. I know there's a few in there already, so we'll go through as many as we can. If we don't get to everyone by the end of the session, we're more than happy to connect afterwards, you know, by any channel that is best. So a few others. So can travelers use their loyalty points? Um, the short answer is yes. Carrie, do you want to maybe touch on that a little bit more?
Like for their Aeroplan points and
Uh,
things like that. Is
I
that?
it's a it's just as loyalty,
Oh,
so we can talk
yes.
about air and hotel.
Oh, yeah. So for air, I'm going to base on my experience, is they can enter all of those loyalty, Aeroplan, all the things into their Z profile. So, when you need your Aeroplan points for that Air Canada Wi-Fi, it's attached to your booking. Um, and I think that was really important to our travelers.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah.
And sorry, Jesse, you know what I think is also a good point based on the technology? Liability wise, I know we haven't really touched upon this, but it's not that it's bad to call a travel agent and give them your SIN number, your birth date, your whole life, your credit card, and everything like that. But to be able for them to put in their, I said SIN number, you don't ask for your SIN number, but I just am saying with important information, passport information, all of that, um, over the phone versus in themselves, with a password. In this day and age, I think that is a really critical piece that we kind of haven't touched upon, especially with 700 plus people. What happens when you call the agent and they're writing it down? There's nothing wrong with that, but from a company's perspective, for travel policies, it's great that they get to put their own private information in themselves.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so we have some more here. Thank you, everyone. So say we use Z for our transient program, does the traveler need to make a new profile for their event travel? Will their transient policy apply, or is it the events policy? That's a great question. And I'm gonna try not to have my geek hat come on too strong here because I tend to get a little too technical. But basically, if you're part of our transient program, the short answer is no, you don't have to create a new profile. Everything is basically seamless to you. So what'll happen is that when you get invited to an event, two things will happen. First of all, you'll receive the email that we talked about earlier. And when you click I want to book my trip, you'll get linked to the event booking site, which from the traveler perspective is the same booking site as the one that they usually use to book transient travel. Or if you happen to log into V for some other reason, you're going to book a transient trip, you're looking for your past itinerary or invoice, you're using another Z feature. When you click book a trip, the pop-up that usually says, for myself, for another traveler, or for a guest, will also have a fourth option, which is for the event that is I've been invited to. So it might say, I want to book for, Dental Corp National Conference 2026. And when I click that button and I go into the online booking tool, it'll automatically pre-populate all of the information about the trip for me. So it'll have departure date, arrival, destination will be locked, right? And there's a few things in there, and it'll be based on the policy that was set up. So the second part of this question is, will their transient policy apply, or is it the event policy? The answer is the event policy. We have seen before that companies like to just apply their transient policy to their events. There isn't really any big difference besides arrival dates and times, and so it'll be almost the same, besides that. But you could have it as, a completely 180 policy if you wanted to. Um, the next question is this applicable to all group sizes? I organize offsites for 18 to 40 people for my boss. Would this work? So that's a great question. The answer is yes. This can apply to groups of any size. So Carrie, you recently started on another event with us. This is actually great timing because we just did our 750 person event
Yes.
together, and soon we have, I think it's 45 people that you have traveling, or 24.
Yeah, 4 times a
Yeah.
year.
Four
Yeah.
times a year, this group of 24 that travels. And so this is perfect. So maybe you could explain to us a little bit how the process of getting organized for the 24 person event went. Obviously, you don't want it to be as cumbersome, and it's not this 6 month long process. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is happening in Mexico. And going back to the question about credit cards, some of the 24 participants Dental Corp is covering, some of them they are covering their cost. So I think really taking it back, I met with your team, and it's not my event. I'm supporting one of our teams here, which events is often supporting the rest of the cross-functional departments, and understanding again those policies. What does this look like? For me it's a brand new event. How when do the dentists sign up to go? How do we get that? Because it's more complicated. They're registering through a third party, not even through Dental Corp. And then when do they get their Z login? They're welcome to Z. They're not in our profile. How do we set that up? What are the boundaries? How do we what is a yes and a no? Is everybody going through Z? Do they need that online? Do they need that dedicated support? Do they not need a dedicated support? So I think it's your necessarily Encore asking us a lot of questions and us saying, hey, no, we actually have the situation. There was like an entire team that wanted to travel together, but they're not actually part of the event. They're just going to Mexico together. And there's 101 scenarios, and I think we just go through them again, understanding the traveler, understanding what the business Dental Corp wants, and then setting it up, testing it, putting that in place, making sure that it works for the user. Because sometimes when you say I want it to look like this, and then you look at it, you're like, I don't think we want to give them that access to book any business class, flex. We want them, a refundable ticket, but in this class. So I think we need to go down those testing to make sure that it works within our event as well. And that's only for 24 people. But it's again, experience, understanding the traveler, understanding you can't predict, like we said, all situations,
Mhm.
but enough of the ones that we did to set it up, and then we go live and we say book it. And Encore, it's to you now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what's really important to mention here also is that Carrie mentioned at the beginning, like, she's busy managing 100 events a year, right? And among other things. And we are the travel experts, and we're the ones that are here to walk you through it. And so what's really important is that if you have 10 people traveling, to this event, and you want to use the technology because you want them to have that user experience, but obviously you don't want this to be a massive lift for 10 travelers that are going to this place, we will work with you to identify, these are the things you really need to think about. These are the things for a group this size. Don't worry about it, right? Like we've got other controls, other things in place that are going to make sure that that goes smoothly without having to overthink and overinvest at the beginning of the process. So we're there to walk you through that. None of this is done on your own. Every single event that we do, from 10 people all the way to 3,000, 10,000 people, whatever it may be, right? A member of our team is assigned to you as your dedicated event organizer, and so they're there to walk you through everything from the technology to the air to the room blocks. So I noticed that we have a question about how room blocks are managed. Room blocks are managed directly with the hotel from our team. They're not managed on the platform. There's lots of reasons for that. Room block management is really um, a a discussion a lot of the times, right? It's not necessarily oh, I want this one. Okay, we're good to go. I'm going to pick this. That said, like I mentioned earlier, our technology is continuously evolving. So the really cool part about owning our own tech is that our customer feedback needs um, priorities are what drive our product roadmap. And so today, because of the exponential growth that we've seen both in the numbers in the market as well as in our day-to-day experience with our customers in corporate travel, the event platform is really a top priority for us. So every week there are new features that are coming out, right? It was like, I remember the days where we had event organizers telling us, well, I have a meeting card, right? And as a travel management company, we're like, oh, like we never had anybody that needed a meeting card. But guess what? Today you can add a meeting card, right? No problem, right? So the really important thing, like I said earlier, is you can't predict, but you can adapt. And being adaptable is I think the name of the game as we build out the tech. So um uh room block management, registration, all sorts of additional items that are needs in the market are definitely something that we're gonna focus on and continue to build out.
I think also
Um,
with when you talk about rooms, hotel rooms versus flights, like a flight is like you got to leave somewhere and you got to get somewhere. That's the flight. When it comes to rooms, there's like, um double beds versus a queen bed and this, and there's so many things from our perspective that we give to Encore and say, "Hey, these are the people that need this. These are and then they also give you their own things that they need in a room. I think when you go to a hotel room, um, you have an expectation, and sometimes that's a really hard thing when you're doing a flight booking that is so black and white versus this isn't like you said, it's a conversation. It's a constant conversation with the rooming list.
yeah, exactly. And speaking of the rooming list, I think something that's really important to mention also is that the ability to have the visibility through the flight manifest at any given moment really helps facilitate that room block and rooming list management as you go through the process. And so, we have in some cases our customers want to manage the room block and the rooming list themselves, and in some, where they can go into the platform, pull their manifest, deal with the hotel, and they don't want us to touch that. And then there's some cases where, for example, with Carrie's most recent group, we manage the rooming list end to end. And so any, any amount of support that we can give is there. And the tool is really facilitating those processes as you go. Um, we got another question. If they're a repeat event attendee, can their profile be reused for the next event? That's a great question. And the answer is absolutely yes. We work with you to know that the travelers, um, you know, there are some cases where we specifically want to delete traveler information after the event because of, any contractual PII requirements. We are SOC 2 compliant where we take security very seriously. If for whatever reason we don't want to house any travel profile information in our site after the event has gone live, we can absolutely support uh destroying that content, though it is encrypted anyway, right? However, if you're gonna be booking repeat events and it's that your attendees are going to be repeat attendees, we will absolutely keep that data there so that people don't have to go in and re-enter all of their information every time they're attending an event. Um, More questions. Carrie, do you have anything to add?
The rooming list, I know you spoke about that, but I don't think, the event in Vancouver, and I'm not just saying this because you're here. Um, I don't
I don't
think
even
that
know what
I
you're
could
gonna
have.
say.
I don't think that I could have handled it, or my team could have handled it. It's not that we're not capable, but there were so many changes. Even a traveler, they changed their flight, they changed their dates. There's so many like details that you need to know with the rooming list that maybe it was 10 people I could do it, or 20 people, but when you get into, we had 450 rooms. That's a lot of rooms and a lot of people and a lot of expectations. And I just will say, like, I was there on the grounds and Encore was there, and everything kind of was set up for people to come. Going back, we kind of started with the experience. We're ending kind of on the experience note. Okay, their travel, they've got there, they're at the hotel, they go to check in. That again, that needs to be as seamless as possible. There's so many moving parts. There's the front desk. It could be the front desk team that has everything. They could not know your group, which I like to I go and I say, hey, we're coming, know that we're coming. There's so many hands in the pot to make that travel feel like the experience, like I'm ready to go. I'm here,
Mhm.
I'm ready to go, I'm excited. And all those touch points really matter to me, to Dental Corp, and through working with Encore. Um, and I'm not just saying this because we just did this together, and it went really, really well. But those things matter.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so I know we have only a few minutes left, so we'll take last final questions. Um, we have a question here for Carrie. Was there anything different that was done for VIP travelers on your end?
Um, Yes, I flagged them. I think, VP, whether it's our executive team, they're hosting the weekend. They're the faces. So setting up from the flights to the rooms, just identifying them, whether it's also putting, charge everything to the master. Again, I know it's internal, but to go to that front desk and they're like, can I have a credit card where they're hosting it? Those small
People
details
hate that.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, our executives are really down to earth and they would have no problem taking out their credit card. But that matters to me as an event planner that's putting
Yeah.
this on because that's kind of the start. So,
Yeah.
yeah, keeping them in the back of mind and saying to Encore, identifying who they are from the beginning, from the get go, um, is important. Everybody's important. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
But everybody has a note, and that's definitely something that was noted.
Right. And so one last question I think we have time for because it's a quick one. We have one that says, what specific support did you get from the team that was on site? So what were they actually doing there?
A lot of people, whether with I don't know, I can't find my itinerary. As simple as like, when am I supposed to go? When should I go there? Or, hey, this was Saturday. I actually need to get home earlier. Something happened. Everybody's life, things happen. Can you help me change my flight? Or I need to, when I got there was somebody that said my spouse can't come. Something happened with their daughter. They can't come anymore. I went straight to the travel desk and I said, "Hey, can we cancel that person or can we change their flight?" And instead of an email or a call, which is fine in that moment, in the event where you have
Huge
700
difference.
people, yeah, you're worried about the food and the swag and the AV. Going to talk to somebody in that moment is the easiest way to problem solve for that traveler.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful. So I think we're just about at time. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I really hope that this was insightful. The goal was really to help guide you guys on your future events that you might have. What things to think about when choosing a partner, and just organizing an event from A to Z. Events are fun. They're meant to be exciting and things to look forward to, not things to stress about. So hopefully, this discussion helped you get a list together of things that you can think about ahead of time and make the whole experience a little bit more fun.
Thanks so
So
much for having me.
thank you so much for joining us, Carrie. I really appreciate it. This was fun.